I've always believed that the worst monsters don't come from haunted houses or dark forests. They come from the places we feel safe, familiar places, places we let our guard down, like a warm, quiet house on a rainy night. This happened in 2022. I was 27, working remotely and living in Pittsburgh. My Aunt Julia asked if I could house sit for her while she visited her daughter in Oregon. I was more than happy to help. Her home was nestled in the woods about an hour away from town, quiet, surrounded by pine trees and foggy hills. It had this peaceful, almost dreamlike vibe. I thought I'd spend the weekend sipping coffee, working on my laptop, and enjoying the kind of stillness you just don't get in the city. But that house had a different kind of silence, a heavy kind, the kind that makes you hear things you normally wouldn't, like the ticking of a clock or the groan of settling wood, or footsteps you think you heard upstairs but weren't quite sure. The first day went by uneventfully. I arrived Friday afternoon, got settled, took the dog, Charlie, a golden retriever, for a walk, and made dinner. The rain started sometime after 7 p.m., soft at first, then harder. By 9 p.m. it was a full-blown storm. That's when I first noticed something off. I was in the living room, curled up on the couch with Charlie at my feet, watching TV with the curtains wide open. There's this huge picture window in the living room, takes up most of the wall and overlooks the front yard and the woods beyond. When the lightning flashed, I could see the rain slashing sideways across the trees. It was beautiful in a haunting sort of way. And then I saw it, a figure, just for a second, illuminated by the flash, standing at the edge of the tree line, still, watching. I blinked. Another flash. Gone. I sat forward, staring out into the darkness, telling myself it was probably just a shadow, or maybe a deer. Charlie hadn't barked, and he was a good guard dog, normally, but he was fast asleep, chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. Still, I got up, walked to the window, squinted into the downpour. Nothing. I shrugged it off and closed the curtains, though I couldn't shake the chill in my spine. Something about the way that figure stood there. It wasn't hunched or moving like an animal. It was upright, human. I turned off the TV and tried to go to bed, but around 1:30 a.m., I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. Knock, knock, knock. It was slow, deliberate, like someone wanted me to hear it. The sound came from the living room window, not the front door. The window I had just closed the curtains on earlier. Charlie jumped up and started growling, low, deep, his fur standing on end. I grabbed my phone, flashlight, and slowly crept toward the living room. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. The house was dark, except for the dim glow from a nightlight in the hallway. I got to the curtain and paused, not sure if I wanted to look, but I did. I pulled the curtain open just an inch, and I swear to God I stopped breathing. A man was standing on the other side of the glass, his face inches from mine, eyes wide, unblinking, wearing a drenched black coat and a brimmed hat that cast a shadow over most of his face, except for the grin. That horrible, wide, unnatural grin. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at me through the rain-soaked glass. Charlie was barking now, clawing at the floor. I stepped back, fumbling for my phone, and called 911. The dispatcher answered, but I barely remember what I said. Something about a man outside, staring through the window. She told me officers were on the way and to stay inside. Lock everything. Don't confront him. I didn't plan to. I closed every curtain, locked every door, checked the back sliding glass entrance, then huddled in the hallway with Charlie. I didn't hear any more knocks, didn't see anything, but I felt his presence, like his eyes were still on me through the walls. The cops showed up 20 minutes later. They searched the yard, the woods, even used a thermal camera, but found nothing. No footprints in the mud, no broken branches. Nothing on the security cam facing the driveway either. It was as if the man had never been there. They told me it was probably a prank, a trespasser, maybe someone camping in the woods. But I could see it in their faces. They didn't believe it was just a prank. Something about the expression I described clearly disturbed them. They promised extra patrols and left. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Charlie stayed curled up next to me the entire time, ears perked, staring at the door like he was waiting. The next day, the storm cleared. The sun came out. It was almost too normal. I convinced myself it was just a crazy one-time encounter. Maybe some lunatic who wandered through the woods and decided to freak me out. But that night, it happened again. This time, it wasn't the window. It was the back sliding glass door. It was 11:43 p.m. I remember because I had just checked the clock before heading to bed. I heard the sound of rain starting again, light at first, then a sudden downpour like a faucet had been turned all the way on, and then scraping, like something metallic dragging across the glass. I tiptoed into the kitchen, heart hammering, holding a kitchen knife in one hand. I didn't go straight to the door. I crouched near the edge of the counter and peeked around it, and there he was, again, standing at the sliding glass door, not knocking this time, just slowly dragging a long, thin object across the glass, back and forth, back and forth. When lightning flashed, I got a better look at what he was holding. It was a rusted crowbar. Charlie lost his mind, growling, snarling, barking like I'd never heard before. I screamed and hit the panic button on my phone's security app. The alarm blasted through the house. The man didn't flinch. He just turned and walked away. This time, the cops arrived quicker. They brought in a K-9 unit, searched every inch of the woods. Again, nothing. Not a single trace. But they took me a lot more seriously this time. One of the officers told me something that chilled me to the bone. He said, "There have been a few calls like this lately. Same area, same description. Always during heavy storms. Always late at night. We've never caught him." I packed my bags and left at sunrise. But it didn't end there. A week later, back in my own apartment, it rained hard. I tried to shake off the memories, convinced myself it was all in the past. Then I got a text from an unknown number. "You forgot to say goodbye." Attached was a photo of me, standing in the hallway of my aunt's house, holding Charlie, peeking out the curtain. The photo was taken from outside the window. I dropped my phone. Shaking, I called the police, but they couldn't trace the number. I changed phones, changed numbers, even moved to a new place with better security. But now, every time it rains, especially at night, I feel like I'm being watched. I keep the curtains drawn. I check every door twice. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear 3 soft knocks on the glass. Slow, deliberate, waiting. I've come to accept something terrifying. He's not just some drifter. He's patient. He waits for the storm, and he always finds a window. I'm not the kind of person who scares easily. I've worked night shifts for nearly a decade. Truck stops, warehouses, even security patrol. I've walked down alleys most people wouldn't drive through in broad daylight. But what happened to me 3 years ago, on a rainy night in October, it left a crack in me that's never quite healed. And to this day, I don't drive down Clover Road after dark. It was a Thursday night, late in the fall. I had just finished a double shift at the shipping center. The rain had been on and off all day, but by the time I clocked out around 10:45 p.m., it had turned into a relentless downpour. My windshield wipers struggled to keep up. Roads were slick and mostly empty, the city long asleep. My route home normally takes me down Route 19, but because of flooding and a stalled truck, I had to take a detour through the outskirts. Back roads that snaked through farmland and abandoned lots. And that's when I ended up on Clover Road. I'd driven that way once before, years ago. It was a stretch of narrow 2-lane road surrounded by dense woods and sagging wire fences. No lights, no gas stations, just long shadows and trees that seemed to lean a little too close to the pavement. As I turned onto it, the storm hit its peak. Wind whipped branches across my windshield. Thunder rolled so violently, I felt it in my chest. And then came the strangest thing, a headlight beam in the distance, bouncing slightly, like a car parked on the side of the road. I slowed down. As I got closer, I saw a silver sedan pulled over to the right, hazard lights blinking slowly like a heartbeat. The driver's side door was wide open. At first, I thought someone might have hydroplaned and needed help. But the second I rolled down my window, I felt it, that gut-deep instinct that something wasn't right. The interior light was on. The car was running, but no one was inside. I pulled over ahead of the car and got out, the rain instantly soaking through my hoodie. I called out, "Hey, you okay out here?" No answer, just the thrum of rain on metal and the buzzing of the hazard lights. I cautiously walked back toward the car, shining my flashlight inside. The engine was still humming. Driver's seat empty. Passenger seat had a purse sitting on it, half zipped open. No signs of a struggle. No blood. No broken glass. It looked like someone had just stepped out and vanished. I leaned over, looked into the back seat. Empty. Then I checked the trunk. Also empty. Clean, even. That's when I noticed something strange. Footprints. Leading away from the car. Barefoot ones. Small. Deeply pressed into the muddy grass, as if the person was running. They disappeared into the woods. I stood there, soaked and shivering, trying to decide whether I should call 911 or check the woods myself. That's when I heard it. Rustling. Not wind, not rain, something else. Something moving fast. And then, something whispered my name. I froze. My name, clearly whispered. There was no way, no one knew I was out here. I didn't even tell my roommate I was taking the back road. I spun around, flashlight trembling in my hand. Who's there? Silence. Just the hiss of rain on leaves. I backed away from the trees, my eyes scanning every shadow. That's when I saw movement, across the road, just behind my truck. A figure, barefoot, slender, pale, just standing there. I raised my light, heart pounding. It was a girl, maybe late teens, soaking wet, dressed in what looked like pajamas or a hospital gown, her long hair plastered to her face. She didn't look at me, didn't move, just stood there in the downpour, hands hanging limply at her sides. "Hey, are you all right? Do you need help?" I called out. No response. I took a step forward, and in a split second, she was gone. Vanished, like a frame cut from a movie. No running, no fading, just gone. I sprinted to my truck and locked the doors, heart hammering in my throat. I sat there, engine idling, staring at that spot behind my truck. The sedan? Gone too. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, flipped on the high beams. Nothing. No blinking hazards, no car, no footprints. Just wet road and trees. I know what you're thinking. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I dozed off. But listen, when I drove off that night, I kept the dash cam footage, and the footage cuts out during the exact time I stopped. 4 minutes of static. Then it comes back on as I'm flooring it out of there. I reported the incident, gave the footage to a state trooper. You know what they told me? There's no Clover Road listed in our system. I went back 2 days later, broad daylight, armed with a map, GPS, and my friend Rob. We searched for hours. No Clover Road, no intersection, no road sign, nothing. I don't know where I was that night. I don't know what I saw. But 2 weeks later I received a letter. No return address. No name. Just a white envelope with shaky handwriting. Inside was a single Polaroid photo of me, standing outside that silver sedan, flashlight in hand, taken from the trees. On the back of the photo, one word was written in red ink. Closer. I moved out of state 6 months later, but I never threw that photo away. I keep it in my desk drawer, buried under papers and receipts, because sometimes, when it rains and I'm alone, I swear I can hear hazard lights blinking. And sometimes, just sometimes, I wake up to wet footprints on my apartment floor, and I live on the 3rd floor. I never used to believe in anything supernatural. Ghosts, spirits, cursed objects. It was all just creepy campfire talk to me. I'm a school teacher, logical by nature. I like facts, data, real things you can explain. But that belief shattered one night in 2019 during a storm I'll never forget. My wife, Emily, and I had just moved to a small town in upstate New York. Quiet place, trees everywhere. People leave their doors unlocked. The kind of town where nothing ever happens until it does. We bought an old house, built in 1904. 2 stories, wide porch, creaky wooden floors, and a fireplace that hadn't been used in decades. It needed work, but we loved it instantly. Our dream home. A fresh start. The first few weeks were great, even cozy. Then the rain came. I remember the first rainy night clearly. The sky was this sickly shade of gray, and the thunder didn't boom. It rolled, like something was crawling across the sky. Emily was out of town visiting her sister, so it was just me and our cat, Moose. Around midnight, I was grading papers at the dining table when I heard something. A voice. It was faint at first, almost buried in the sound of the rain hitting the roof. I paused, tilted my head, and listened. Nothing. I went back to work. A few minutes later, there it was again. This time, I was sure of it. A woman's voice, whispering, garbled, like someone trying to talk through water. I turned off the ceiling fan, the TV, and everything else that could be making noise. The whispering continued, soft, rhythmic, like someone was standing outside, right below the open kitchen window, muttering over and over. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside onto the porch. Rain poured in sheets, thunder echoing in the distance. The front yard was empty, no one on the sidewalk, no neighbors out. I walked around the side of the house, past the hedges, toward the kitchen window. Nothing, just wet grass and darkness. But the whispering didn't stop. It was still there, Only now, it was coming from behind me. I spun around. No one. I backed up against the house, flashlight shaking in my grip. I even called out, "Who's there?" feeling stupid the moment I said it. Of course, no answer, only the sound of rain dripping from the eaves. I went back inside, locked the doors, and told myself I was just tired. Maybe the pipes were acting up. Maybe it was the wind, but I couldn't sleep that night because the whispers didn't stop. They got closer. By 2 a.m., they were inside the house. It started in the hallway, faint, almost like breathing. I crept out of bed and stood there in the dark, heart pounding, trying to pinpoint the source. The voice moved, slowly, from the hallway to the living room. It whispered my name, not once, not like a dream, over and over. "Daniel, Daniel." That's when Moose, my cat, bolted out from under the bed and hissed toward the hallway. He puffed up like a balloon, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. I tried to rationalize it. Old houses make noise. Cats freak out sometimes. But deep down, I knew what I heard. Voices. Inside the house. During the storm. The next day, I dug through the attic and found an old box left behind by the previous owners. Inside was a stack of newspapers, brittle and yellowed, dated from the 1970s. One headline stood out: "Local woman found dead in cellar after storm." I scanned the article. The woman's name was Margaret Elson. She had lived in this house, alone, widowed, unstable according to the article. She was reported missing during a violent thunderstorm. Days later, her body was discovered in the basement, drowned in less than 2 feet of water from a busted pipe. She'd been down there for 3 days. It creeped me out, sure, but still, I'm not one to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was just letting the story get to my head, until the next storm rolled in. Emily had returned home by then, and I didn't tell her anything. I didn't want to scare her, but the night of that second storm, she woke me up around 1 a.m. whispering, "Daniel, there's someone in the house." My blood turned cold. We sat up, listened, and there it was, whispering, same voice. Only now it wasn't faint, it was loud, clear, and angry. We grabbed our phones and crept down the stairs, flashlights in hand. The whispering came from the basement door. It was slightly open, just an inch. Water trickled from underneath. I reached out and pushed it fully open. That's when the lights in the entire house went out. Thunder cracked so loud the walls shook. The basement was pitch black, except for our flashlights. The air smelled like mold and rust. We started down the stairs, each step groaning beneath our feet. Halfway down, Emily grabbed my arm. "Look!" At the bottom of the steps, in the beam of her flashlight, stood a woman, soaking wet, head down, hair covering her face, dressed in what looked like a tattered nightgown. Neither of us moved. We couldn't. She slowly lifted her head. Her mouth was open, whispering something, but there was no sound, just her lips moving, like a broken recording. And then she screamed, a guttural, inhuman sound that shook the entire basement. We ran, full-on sprint, up the stairs, slammed the door, and didn't stop running until we were outside, barefoot in the rain, huddled under a neighbor's porch. When the police arrived, they searched the house. No woman, no footprints, no evidence of a break-in, but they did find something strange in the basement. Water seeping up from the ground in a perfect circle, like something had just stood there. After that night, we stayed in a hotel for weeks, eventually sold the house, at a loss. We moved to a new place, newer construction, middle of the city. No trees, no basement. But that didn't stop her, because every time it rains, every time, we hear whispering. Not just faint echoes, actual voices. Emily hears them in the shower. I hear them behind the walls. They say our names now. Sometimes they laugh. Sometimes they cry. Sometimes they just breathe. Last week, during a thunderstorm, our smart speaker turned on by itself. It played an audio clip, one neither of us downloaded. A voice saying, "Let me out of the water." The clip was only 4 seconds long, but it played over and over again. We moved across the country this year, thinking maybe, just maybe, we'd left her behind. But last night, the rain returned. It beat hard against our windows, and just after midnight, Emily stood up in bed, eyes wide, and whispered, "She's here again. She's in the drain this time." I turned on the lights, ready to calm her, when I noticed something terrifying. Her feet were soaked, dripping wet, puddles on the carpet, but the windows were closed, no leaks, and it hadn't rained inside. We don't talk about it much now. We don't know what she wants. We don't know why she followed us. But one thing is certain, wherever we go, when the storm comes back, so does she.